It's a lot. Okay, right, we're live. Oh, well, thanks, Sandra, for coming along to the show.
Welcome.
This is Better Futures, where we're discussing issues in aged care. You've been in aged care for a little while. What are you up to now?
Well, since leaving my role at Uniting a couple of years ago, I've started out on my own doing strategic advisory and consulting
Yeah, cool.
services, specializing in customer experience,
Very
brand
important.
development, marketing, and leadership and engagement. Because
Wow.
the role I was in was as the chief customer and marketing
All
officer.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So really enjoying it. It's
yeah.
great.
And so when was the last time you were back at Uniting? Because that was sort of your background where you're at.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
So
Cool.
since then, I've been working with a lot of purpose-led organisations,
Right.
particularly in aged care.
What do you mean by purpose-led? What does that mean?
So purpose-led is organisations that are primarily not-for-profit,
Yep.
or their reason for being is to better the lives of others, and that could
Yeah,
be in
right.
any way. So whatever their purpose or their mission, vision is, it's
Yeah, it's a
about
positive.
it's about the
Yeah,
doing good in the world, I guess, in
yeah.
whatever form that could be. That's in a
And
range of
is
organisations.
that most aged care companies, or is that 50% of them? Or how many?
I'd say it's all of them.
It's all of them. Yes.
All of
So
them.
they're all valid customers.
Absolutely. Whether they're working to make a profit or whether they're not-for-profit
Yeah.
organisations, basically the premise is purpose-led because it's about supporting people in terms of their lives as they age and
Yeah.
giving them a better life as
Yeah,
they
the end of life
age.
journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great to hear.
Yeah.
Cool. And so we're looking at like so what the issues are in the aged care industry market.
Yeah.
And obviously we're going through the Royal Commission at the moment.
Yes.
And we've already had COVID came through, and that was terrible. And there's a lot of things going on. What do you think are the big issues at the moment facing aged care?
I think probably from my perspective and my background, because I'm not a direct care clinician
Yeah.
or anything in relation to aged care, but because I've been in the industry for some time, I think the big ones for me are certainly to start off with the reputation and perception of aged care
Yeah.
and older people in our society, and what
Yeah.
that actually means in terms of the fact that the media, as you said, the Royal Commission into Aged Care Quality and Safety,
Yeah.
then we had COVID on top of that.
Yeah.
And the Royal Commission is a good thing.
Right.
It's a good thing because what it's doing is not only highlighting some of the challenges, but it's also working towards solutions that many people in the aged care sector have known about for a long time and want to do something about it.
Right.
So I think it's, while looking at some of the issues that have come up, and they needed to come up and be
Yeah.
highlighted because this is about people's lives.
Yeah.
But it's also providing the opportunity to make change, and this is a real opportunity to do that. And the sectors wants to do that. It's
Right.
just how to enable them to do that.
Right. So they need a big stick.
Well, yeah, they need the solutions, but they also need people to come together, and not only just as a society, but the government and also other
Right.
stakeholders to come together to work on the solutions together,
Right.
rather than putting it as a negative or too hard. It's
Yeah.
so complex.
Yeah.
And I think that by bringing up some of those challenges and working towards the solutions, then we've got real hope.
Yeah, great.
And a lot of the research that's come out of the independent research that's been done through the Royal Commission
Yeah.
have highlighted some really, really good insights in relation to aged care
Right.
that, as a sector, we probably knew.
Okay.
But it's actually bringing it now to public awareness.
So you're talking about best practices, or what do you mean bringing to light?
Well, there's a number of things in terms of, one of the big challenges has been funding for aged care.
Yep.
Providers, some of them struggle, the smaller to medium size struggle with being able to provide excellent care,
Right.
providing a workforce that's capable, ready, and provides that leadership. I think
That's purely
so
funding.
it's funding. There's a lot of things. I mean, it's
Yeah.
so complex,
Yeah.
but it's funding, and how do you actually fund not only the services that you're providing now, but how you fund growth and innovation
Right.
and all of those sorts of things while you're still, it's like that old saying of building the plane while you're flying it.
Right. That's a crazy idea.
Yeah. It's knowing what has to be done,
Yeah.
but having the resources and
Yeah, to actually get it done.
to get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are great people in aged care.
Yeah.
There are great leaders in aged care.
Yeah.
There's a lot of innovation going on, and it's in pockets.
Right.
So it's harnessing using that and being able to make use of technology and a whole lot of other innovations. And there
Yeah.
are things being done,
Yeah.
and there are providers who want to get it done
Yeah.
and
Great.
who have the vision,
Yeah.
which is great. And being able to work with some of those organisations to see where they're heading around the strategic direction and putting the person first,
Yeah. Right.
and creating services around that, rather than going, these are the services that we have and we'll slot
And
them
apply
in.
it to who? Yeah.
Exactly. And I think too, with the emerging, what I call the emerging ages, those
Okay.
people who are young aged people,
What does that mean?
well, in the sort of the baby boomer generation,
Okay.
very different to the generations that are in aged care now,
Yeah.
where they saw that that was their lot, and they had services and received services. So sometimes like a passive type of return
Right.
on services, whereas the baby boomers are used to saying what they mean what
Yeah.
they say,
Getting what they want.
making change, having control and
Yeah.
independence. And
Yeah.
this is about enabling them to continue on with that control and choice.
Yeah.
Because the research tells us that people want to continue to remain in their own homes.
Yep.
They want to be able to continue to make decisions about their own lives.
Yeah.
They want to continue to live well, no matter what their capacity or capability or mobility.
Yeah.
And how to achieve that is what providers are now working towards
Right.
doing for the future, at the same time as continuing to provide excellent care for
Yeah.
those people who are already in services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so much of the funding goes towards residential care. Right? It's only a small amount really goes to at home. Is that going to change or?
I think it has to change, because certainly some of the findings of the Royal Commission have come out that you get home care packages, but there's a 12-month waiting time to
Yeah.
receive those packages, and people are still staying at home and not receiving the
Any
right
care. Yeah.
support, and then becomes an emergency and they
Yeah.
end up going into residential care. I
Right.
mean, residential care is so complex. The acuity and the reasons why people come into aged care, and particularly residential care,
Yeah.
is because they have a lot of challenges in terms of their health, their mobility.
Yeah.
There's dementia, palliative care, all of those sorts of
Yeah.
things, and how to actually make sure that providers are providing that excellent care,
Yeah.
but at the same time supporting people to live the lives that they want to.
Absolutely.
And the challenges around the workforce, and having a workforce that's skilled to be able to, really cater for those high acuity needs. It's
Yeah.
high cost,
Right.
And for people who, we've got to be really careful that people don't fall through the gaps. They need
Yeah.
access to aged care. And some of the research that's come out of the Royal Commission as well has said that people are actually willing to pay for aged care.
Right.
How they construct that funding in the future
Yeah.
will be interesting to see how that works.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's important that we don't have people fall through the gaps who can't afford to pay for their own aged care, because there
Yeah.
are a lot of people, particularly women, who may not have superannuation to fund, single women who may not be able to fund their aged care in the future. So we've got to be really careful about making sure that we provide for those people who potentially could fall
Yeah. On the
through the
edges.
gaps, and also to ensure that we're responding and reflecting the society that is today, which is extremely diverse,
Yeah.
and the changing nature of family and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very complex.
Very complex. Yeah.
And so do you think people are waiting for the funding models to change before they do something, or are people actually moving on and trying to provide better services with what they've got?
I think they've always tried to provide better services with what they've got. And there are a number of organisations who are, I think, certainly being very innovative and forward thinking, understanding the needs and expectations of people now and people of the older people of the future and what they
Yeah.
want, and trying to shape their service delivery to meet that need. They're not going to necessarily wait for what's going to happen, because that could take quite some time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certainly been discussions around being able to support the workforce and increase training capability,
Yeah.
capacity, and so forth. But you can't wait for all of that to happen. There are organisations that I've worked with who are
Yeah.
just doing it now, and that's really encouraging and
Yeah. It's great.
great to see. And how they're working towards harnessing technology
Yeah.
to increase productivity, but to also make customers' lives easier,
Yeah. Great.
because navigating the aged care system is so hard.
Yes, I've heard that.
And most people who've had to support an older person or a loved one in terms of getting into aged care. It's
Yeah.
not easy. And the discussions around that have been going on for years.
Right.
How that actually is solved is through working with the customer and what they need and how they do it. So shifting from being organisation focused and going, well, look, we'll slot you into these services, is
Yeah.
starting with the person
Yeah. What are your
and
needs?
going, what are your needs? Let's
Yeah.
get to know you and hear you and listen to you, and then create a wraparound set of services that work for you and the life you want to live.
Yeah.
And it's not just about clinical care.
Yeah.
It's all about the
It's
whole of
holistic.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like everybody, we all want, and
Yeah.
we have that choice and control about what we do. We
Yeah.
want that for older people as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
And so do you think that, well, with more people going, well, staying at home, does that mean that there'll be less people going to residential homes? And will those, because there's different levels of care that you get
Yes.
from residential homes, do you think that will all squeeze together to have just the high acuity stuff coming out of home care, or
Yeah,
maybe people?
I think it'll start with the person and then how to actually create those services. So I think, and I mean, certainly they're the discussions and even things that have come out of the Royal Commission is saying, the days of the huge residential aged care homes where there's hundreds of people in there and it's got quite a sort of a hospital model.
Yeah.
Um, that will change and they won't continue on. There'll always be a need to provide support and care for people um, who have incapacity and they
Yeah.
can't be cared for at home,
Yeah.
or who have dementia or palliative. I mean, not everybody can do palliative at home,
Right.
but that's on the move. It's about what people wish for.
Yeah.
So there's discussions and some services are already doing that. I'm on the board of an aged care provider at the moment who have small group homes of no more than 40 people,
Yeah.
and
Right.
it's a very family-like environment.
Right.
But there's even discussions about even doing smaller
Okay.
ones than that. How you fund that as well, because sustainability and growth for providers is also
Yeah.
a challenge.
Because there's generally a division of labor, so things get cheaper as they get bigger. Is that the idea, or
Yeah, economies of scale.
economy of scale? Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so how do you fund something that is about providing the best possible care and support for people as they age,
Yeah.
at the same time remaining as a sustainable provider?
Yeah. So how do you measure this quality of life? Because it's well, people have been struggling for centuries to try and figure out. Because we can easily quantify economics and how much money you have, that's easy.
Yes.
But quality of life is something that's very hard to measure.
Yeah, I think that is a challenge. And I think there's looking at the particular indicators for what makes a person happy and what their well-being is, and how to actually find what are the measurements of that. And certainly there are clinical indicators
Yeah.
that say, there's not as many falls and
Yeah.
these sorts of things, but how to actually gauge a person's quality of life and happiness. There's a lot of organisations that do work within aged care providers to
Yeah.
work on sort of the well-being aspect, and they do that not only with the people in the services or the customers, residents.
Yeah.
They do it with staff, because if the staff aren't
Happy.
happy,
They're not happy
then
service.
it's going to be very difficult to provide the service that you want, that is
Yeah.
about the excellent customer experience, that is not just clinical, significantly important, but every interaction
Yeah.
and every moment that a staff member and a resident or family member or volunteer interacts with that person.
Yeah.
Has to be the best it can be every interaction, every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's very hard when you're talking with different people, like people who've got dementia or when it's really advanced. It's a different way of dealing with that person and with
Absolutely.
someone's in there.
Absolutely. And it always boils down to respect and dignity, and ensuring that person, even though there are challenging behaviours, it's about
They're still a
ensuring that
person.
they are a person.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the challenge around workforce is being able to provide a workforce that is enabled to do that at the same time as providing care and support for the whole person and
Yeah.
linking them with the things that they need. So it's not an easy one, and I think
Yeah.
it's one of those things that it can be so overwhelming. It's where do you start?
Yeah.
So there are many organisations that are working towards that, and they hold on to that vision, and I think that's the important part. As I say, at the same time as still working towards providing the best care possible for people who are in the services.
Yeah. Because it really is the workforce that can provide the service. So
Absolutely.
are they mostly nurses, or are they what are the people inside residential care? Because like there's Cert 3, Cert 4,
Yep.
and there's full blown nurses, but
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's primarily, I mean, I would say that there's certainly the RNs, registered nurses,
yeah,
there's clinical care experts, there's a whole range of service providers.
yeah,
But it's also about the quality of an interaction that happens between the person who comes in to clean your room,
yeah,
the quality of the interaction, the person that might make a meal for you or deliver that meal for you.
yeah,
And so there's a range of obviously roles and responsibilities, and it's looking at what does that workforce look like in the future,
yeah,
because there will be specialists and specialist areas, but every person will need to have capability in customer experience and customer service,
yeah.
because that's what it boils down to. You see other businesses and other industries know that that's
Oh,
what
it's the
makes
first
the
thing. Yeah.
difference. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
baseline.
it is. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so with the place you mentioned where they've got sort of 40 people and it feels like a family, what does it actually look like? Like, what does the family look like? The family feeling? Like,
Well,
people interacting together nicely,
yeah,
or is it
it's actually it's probably not what you would think is the traditional family unit, but
right,
it's the sense of family and the connection that occurs, and understanding and knowing everybody. So all
right,
of the staff know all of the,
all the
in that
residents?
particular residential aged care
Yeah,
home, all of the staff know all of the residents, all of the residents know all of the
right,
staff know all of the family members.
right,
So on a large scale, you can't achieve that.
right. Yeah,
But the actual culture of the organization
yeah,
is so important, and it's, as we all know, it comes from the leadership down.
yeah,
So it starts with the board and the governance. They
yeah,
set the tone, and it's about making sure that people are enabled to continue on with that culture.
yeah,
And there are, I mean, that's just my personal experience being on the board, but
yeah,
there are other organizations that have the same sort of thing, but they might have a different model of care, is what they term it.
yeah,
But it all boils down to the same thing, which is providing the best life possible for people.
yeah,
And, there are others that might not have them yet, but given the Royal Commission, given all the things, given the attention, it's where organisations have to go, or they're not going to survive.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at the moment, I think there's a stat I saw that 47% of the residential care homes are losing money. So they
Yes.
have to change.
Yes. Yeah.
And so you were saying there are solutions that are coming out of the Royal Commission? I just thought it was like a fact finding, which aren't kind of like
Yeah, well, they're certainly making recommendations. And
right.
because they're doing studies in relation to how things are funded now, looking at how things might be funded in the future. So it is fact finding, which I think is really important, because you have to know what the current state is to be
Yeah,
able to
yeah,
move towards the future state that you
yeah,
want to achieve. And so I think there are some great positives that are coming out of that. It's important that the acknowledgement of the suffering that's happened for people is really, really is acknowledged
yeah,
and is addressed. At the same time as making sure that that doesn't happen again in the future, we have a responsibility to make sure that all of the older people in our society are valued and respected for who they are.
yeah.
Yeah.
With home care, I heard that the average time spent is at sort of 6 hours a week. Does that sound about right to you?
It possibly is. The packages are developed according to what the needs are of that individual,
Yeah.
and the concept is right. I think what's happening is that people are not making the most of the package available, so they're
Mm.
underutilizing what the packages are available to them. And I think a lot of that is because they don't know what's available to them, and there's a
Yeah.
responsibility on the aged care provider to
To
support
inform them, right?
and yes, and to
Yeah.
help them understand that. And the big shift, because the funding used to go to the provider,
Yeah.
but now it's in the hands of the consumer, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's also about how to ensure that the consumer gets exactly what they need.
Yeah.
Certainly, there's not been the number of higher level care packages that are required for people who are remaining in their homes longer.
Yeah.
And that's been identified and addressed,
Yeah.
which is great. But it's also how you flex as an organisation or provider to ensure that you're able to provide that service. Not all providers provide home care.
Right.
Yeah, so there are some organisations that provide, all the whole range of
Yep.
services, and there are others who are specifically of a particular type of service. Yeah, but I think there's going to be a need to sort of do a lot of partnering.
Yeah.
with each other, but also with other supports and service delivery to
Yeah.
enable people to continue living the life they choose as they get older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one home care company wouldn't have all of the resources that, say, a residential facility would have, like with all these physios and all the other people that get added on. Would that be a true thing? Well, I'm just wondering how these home care guys resource themselves so they can provide more services to the individual.
Well, I mean, specific, I probably wouldn't want to say too much in terms of that's not my
Yeah,
expertise.
sure.
But certainly they provide those services themselves or they partner with others to have that service come in.
Yeah.
So, one of the things, though, that's really important is people want consistency of the staff that come in to
Right.
see them. They're coming into their home.
Yeah.
And it's also about the relationship that they have with that particular worker,
Yeah.
and making sure that that worker knows and understands that person.
Yeah.
And, so most of the services, if they can deliver those services, that's great. They can call on specialists to come and do them. But, it ranges from everything from shopping,
Yeah.
home maintenance to personal care
Yeah.
and high level clinical care in
Yeah.
the home. But it's one of those things where I think, particularly from where I was, it was very new to begin with,
Right.
and how to actually achieve that for people was a challenge. But it's certainly been identified as that's the growth area for providers as well,
Yeah.
in terms of the numbers of people that they can support and
Yeah.
how that's funded. So
Because it's much cheaper to have someone stay at home than it is to be in a residential home. Is that what the government's saying?
there is that, yes, and it's also about quality of life
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, I mean the acuity and the complexity of that a lot of people who are coming into residential care, they're coming in a lot later in age.
Yeah.
They're not there for that long, and they're also requiring high levels of care.
Yeah. Right.
So it's
Because they haven't been looking after themselves when they're at home.
not necessarily. It's just that their family members can't care for them anymore because they're, it's very complex or
Yeah, it's got
hard.
too
They're
hard.
bed
Yeah.
bound or and need support with their own personal care. They
Yeah.
have, a whole lot of other issues. But um, I think the thing with that is making sure that whatever their capacity, they are getting what they need and their wishes are being respected,
Yeah.
because there is always a care plan developed no matter what level you're in.
Yeah.
And making sure that even though your capacity or mobility may not be what it used to be, you
Yeah.
still have your issue, you still have your wishes and how you want to live,
Yeah.
have purpose, meaning,
Yeah.
that sort of thing, connection.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so what sort of purpose can they have? I mean, end of life journey is basically just trying to guide someone in the best way with most dignity towards the end, because it comes for us
Yes.
all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
is there other things that other people can be contributing to society? Like what is value that they can have?
Oh, well, we certainly, I know of organisations looking at how people can volunteer.
Yeah.
The wisdom and
Yeah.
experience of older people is incredible, and there
Yeah.
are cultures that respect that and
Yeah.
actually make the most of that. We don't do that very well.
Yeah.
Our older people in our society are pretty well hidden,
Yeah.
particularly in the workforce. And even though even some of the research, I've read a lot of research from the Royal Commission, but some of the research in the Royal Commission is also saying that the perception of older people in our society, people regard them as they're positive about the perception.
Right.
But I think the reality in terms of how we embrace and work with and enable older people within our society
Yeah.
doesn't match.
Yeah.
It doesn't match. So our actions don't match our perceptions
Yeah.
with that. And we have an opportunity to actually um, rethink how we value older people in our
Yeah.
society. Yeah.
It's hard, but
It is hard, but I think it's that you've just got to start the conversation or nothing happens,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so there are a lot of motivated people who want to change that. Because the thing about aged care is too, attracting people to work in aged care as a career is really, really difficult.
Yeah. Why is
And
that?
well, I think there's a number of reasons. Certainly, there's the public perception or the perception of what aged care actually is like.
Yeah.
It's not an easy job.
Mm.
It's a rewarding job. Um, Wages do not match working in healthcare.
Yeah.
Simple. And for many, many years, uh, people in aged care or staff in aged care who work at the front line, not necessarily the registered nurses, but in general, have not been provided the development and I suppose support in terms of that. I mean,
So where can they go? Like they become a registered nurse, and then how high can they go? I mean, that
well, they
was
can run an
your
organization or be on a
organisation.
board. Yeah, I mean, certainly, I think there's so many amazing, compassionate people who are in the workforce of aged
Yeah,
care.
we have to be, right?
Yeah, and we at times take advantage of that in a way. I don't mean that in a bad way. I
Yeah, it
just
just
mean it in
happens.
terms of that they've already got that innate compassion and care for people. That's why they work
Yeah,
in the aged care sector. But we can't take advantage of that without supporting them to grow and develop if they choose to do that.
yeah,
Because that actually affects the people that are in our services.
yeah,
And that's ultimately why we're there, is to give them a better life. And when you do that, it actually enables and enriches the staff.
yeah.
Yeah.
So how are you trying to address marketing for aged care companies? Because I've looked around a lot of aged care companies, and sometimes they post on Facebook. That's sometimes, yeah, that's pretty much. Sometimes they update the website. So,
Yeah. I think in terms of the marketing side of things, a
yeah,
lot of organizations in the past didn't even consider marketing
yeah,
because people just went to aged care because they saw that that was the next step of things, of something to do as you age.
yeah,
That's how it goes.
yeah,
You get to that age, you go into a retirement village, and there's been a big change now, particularly with regard to the change in funding.
yeah,
Uh, it's going to be in the hands of the consumer. So it's the consumer that makes the choice of where they go, if they can. There's challenges in rural, remote areas, obviously.
yeah,
But so then a number of organisations who've sort of been looking at the demographics over the years and the changing nature of older people and the choices that they want to make have then started going, well, actually, we need to get on the front foot
right,
and be out there and have people know about us
yeah,
and want to be with us because of the way we work.
yeah,
And so, from a marketing perspective, it's not as straightforward as working for another organization that sells widgets and gadgets.
yeah,
It's selling human service and delivery.
yeah,
And selling is a bad word
yeah,
in many ways. But at the same time, it's actually about working towards making sure that we're reaching out to as many people as
yeah.
possible
They got to know what the good
to
places are to go.
enable
Yeah,
them, yeah, to have the services that they deserve
yeah,
as they age. And so looking at from that perspective, rather than going, oh, this is all about making money for the organization,
yeah,
there's a balance.
yeah.
There's a balance between the commercial, you have to, even as not for
You have to be
profit,
solvent.
has to have income.
Yeah,
Yeah, to be able to provide services, pay their staff,
yeah,
that sort of thing. But at the same time, it is also about making sure that we are authentic
yeah,
about who we are and what we're offering, at the same time as differentiating from other service providers
yeah,
and finding that uniqueness so that those people can work towards, well, what's the best match for me and my family and how I want to live.
yeah,
Yeah, so there are a number of organizations that will, you know, look at it from the perspective of, yes, the customer first, but what is it they offer? There
yeah,
are other organizations who have a religious and spiritual background, and
yeah,
for some people that's very much where they want to be for the reasons that they choose.
yeah,
For others, there are people who are concerned about going into aged care because their perception
yeah,
out in the media
yep,
is, oh, I'm going to be treated so
yeah.
badly.
It's like a hospital. That's what they
Yeah, and
expect.
the challenge with that for me is that once you get into aged care and you get to know the people,
Yeah,
there are so many good people and great organisations who are doing great work.
yeah,
We just don't hear about it.
yeah. What's what I'm trying to address
Yeah,
in the show.
yeah, and I think people don't really need to hear about it or don't want to hear about it until it actually personally affects them.
Yeah,
And so
but
that's
that's
one of
like
the
all marketing,
challenges.
right?
That's one of the challenges with marketing, it is. And it's also about how do we work with people who are at a stage where they're not considering aged care yet,
Mm.
and how do we get front of mind? That's what I always say.
Yeah.
How do we become front of mind, first choice when it comes to that decision, so that they're understanding how that actually works for them, helping them navigate that situation so that they can choose how they want to live
Yeah.
as they age. Yeah.
And so what sort of advice do you give to the people? And don't give away all your secrets, but you're just saying, go yeah, what would you say? I've got no idea. What would could you give marketing advice, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah. Well, I think for me, I always start from the inside out.
Yeah.
So I work within an organization to really understand who they are, what their purpose is, but how to actually align that with the customer
Mm.
experience, the brand, the marketing, and also how that then plays out through the leadership and engagement with the staff, how to bring all of those things together.
Yeah.
Because you can't do one without the other. They all interact. And
Yeah.
particularly for aged care organisations and disability services and so forth, is making sure that the model of care that they have is also amplified through that.
What do you mean
So
amplified?
the model of care is not separate to how we work on customer
Right.
experience, how that actually influences the brand of the
Yeah.
organization, what is the promise that we have for this
Yeah.
organization, that's going to happen every time there's an interaction with this organization. So I don't think I'm giving away any secrets. It's more about
Good.
really understanding that organization and what makes it who it
Different. Yeah.
is. And it's always there.
Right.
It's just bringing it out and helping them articulate
Yeah.
that, and then being able to look at, well, what are the channels by which we get that information
Yeah.
out? Are we doing it via storytelling, or are we doing it other ways? So there's a range of things. So the way I work is I don't have templates or cookie cutter.
Yeah.
I just work with the organization first and then create what's required for them, linking it all to their strategic priorities and their directions.
Yeah.
If they don't have them, challenge them about why they don't have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's where you've got to start.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I mean, all the industry was a cottage industry like 20, 30 years ago. So they're
absolutely.
coming into the
Yeah. And a lot of it came out of people wanting to do good for other people,
yeah.
very benevolent.
Mm.
And, there was back in the day, build it and they will come.
Yeah.
We create this.
Which worked, right?
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. There were never, as you say, there were never any occupancy issues.
Right.
Now there are.
Is that because there's been such a massive capacity provided because the baby boomers are coming? So we're building now so that the boomers have some place to go?
There is that. So, there are organisations that are doing 5, 10, 20-year plans. But the
Yeah.
challenge with that is when you build a residential care facility, it's got a lifespan of many, many years.
Yeah.
And there's the whole refurbing. There are organisations now that are really disrupting the aged care industry because they're looking at different ways of providing support and care. And it's not just about the building.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what goes on inside the building.
Yeah.
What are some of the innovations that you've seen that are sort of highlights?
Um, I think there's a lot of work going on in the technology space.
Yeah.
The technology space to enable our staff to increase productivity and have more time, more quality time with the people in care or in their homes. Using tablets and so forth
Yeah.
to put in care plans and information, but also at the same time enabling the customers, residents, and clients the use of technology to connect and do their own thing, maybe even start new hobbies and so
Yeah.
forth.
Great.
And this has really come about even more so with COVID
Yeah. Right. You can't see anybody. So
because you can't see anybody.
yeah.
And I guess for those who probably didn't harness the technology,
Yeah. No, they have to because there's nothing else to
yeah,
do.
and they're loving it. They're loving
Yeah.
it.
Great.
I mean, one model is there was what they called a concierge in each of the facilities, and
Yeah.
it was their responsibility to work with everybody to help them connect with family and so forth.
Yeah. Great.
So, and even just seeing very simple things of through the windows and what have you. But I think technology is one of them. I think also changing the face of the care itself and seeing it more in a holistic way
Yeah.
and thinking about things on how to enable people to do that. I mean, they've done, I've seen virtual trips overseas
Yeah.
where
So
they've
that too.
created people doing that sort of thing. And there's so many examples of great stuff that goes on. I think
But it doesn't spread though. Like it's always
That's
in
the
one
thing,
place, and
there's organizations that do pockets of things really, really well, and their challenge is how to actually scale that across an entire organization. But as you say, it's because of the nature of a number of organizations and how they came about. So
yeah,
there might be organizations that have grown because they've acquired individual
yeah,
facilities
consolidated.
or
Yeah,
services, and so it's how do you bring that culture together. So there's all been different things. So it's not an industry that is particularly straightforward. And there is so much there, and so much legacy. You
yeah,
can't undo that and start from scratch.
yeah,
It's making sure that what you've got, you're actually starting to build on and develop and continue to care for people as we need to. But yeah, ensuring that their quality of life is better than it can be.
yeah, yeah. Or better than it currently
And it's
is.
what they
Yeah,
want. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. But
Uh,
there is some great work going on.
Yeah, so how do you think it will spread? Like, because it shouldn't just spread within a company, it should spread into companies. Like, if someone has a good idea, it should spread throughout the entire industry. If it's good, then
Yeah.
it should spread.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good work being done by the peak organisations in aged care, Laser and AXA,
Yeah,
and also the peak. There are peak organisations who work across the large providers who might be networked across Australia.
yeah,
They're doing amazing advocacy work and also looking at how to provide partnerships and so forth. They do a lot of work together.
yeah,
Um, and I think part of the Royal Commission, part of it's come out of all of the advocacy that goes on.
yeah,
And it's, not going to stop. It's going to get
yeah.
louder, I think. Mm.
And so you think that the different heads of the different companies, they generally only meet through Alexa or through bodies of peak bodies, or do they talk to each other around tables normally? Because it is a very like a lot of goodwill in the community, right?
A
There's
lot of
a
goodwill.
lot of people want to do it for the right reasons,
Yeah.
but they're still competitive at some level.
Yeah, I mean that everyone's a competitor in that sense, but at the same time, particularly in the not-for-profit space, there is because that's where I know most, but
Yeah,
there is a lot of generosity around knowledge and sharing and advocacy. I think there probably could be more,
yeah,
but the leaders of the organisations are primarily incredible people who have got such great experience, and they would do what's necessary
yeah,
for things to go well. And it's the same with boards.
yeah.
That obviously that each organisation has a board as well. So everybody knows everybody.
Okay,
It's well networked,
okay,
and when you're in the industry long enough, paths cross
right.
all the time in a
Yeah,
good way.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cool. Well, how do people find you if they want to find you?
Oh, find me.
Yeah, find
Find
you.
me on LinkedIn. I also have a website, that's black.com.au,
Yep.
and my email and my um, mobile numbers on there.
Cool. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really
Thank
appreciate it, Sandra.
you.
And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you.
Cool. Right. Thanks, YouTube. Bye, Mum.